Do you know why I am going to marry you? Barkas looked down at her silently. Talia stared up into his impossibly calm, empty eyes. She spoke clearly, pressing every single word into his impassive face like a poisoned needle. To see exactly how unhappy you will be. That is why. Talia's voice dropped to a ragged, venomous whisper. Because of me, you will be chained to a hideous, crippled bastard for the rest of your life. I want you to feel the pain that I feel. It hurts, Barkas. It really, really hurts. His gaze darkened, the icy blue iris seeming to deepen into a fathomless ocean. Talia held her breath, waiting desperately for his answer. She wanted this infuriatingly indifferent face to finally collapse. She wanted him to break his stoic composure, to scream at her, to physically push her away. She wanted him to sneer and say it was impossible, that he would rather die than take a twisted, hateful monster like her as his wife. Let him reject me, she prayed silently. Let my heart finally crumble into absolute dust, so perhaps we can both still save the pathetic remnants of our lives. But, as always, Varkas Laedgo entirely defied her expectations. Barkas let out a very brief, quiet sigh, looking exactly as though he had just listened to a petulant child complaining about the rain. He reached down, gently untangled her trembling fingers from his shirt, and straightened his posture. The wedding will take place soon, Barkas stated flatly. He turned his back on her, walked to the far end of the bedroom, and pushed the heavy wooden shutters open. A gust of cool night wind swept into the room, brushing against Talia's flushed face. She sat frozen on the bed, silently absorbing the sight of his broad silhouette bathed in the dying, blood-red light of the sunset. His low, resonant voice drifted back to her, sounding as if it came from very far away. It will be better. For both of us. Talia stared at his back. What did he mean? Did he mean it was better to end this annoying, politically fraught engagement matter as quickly as possible? Talia peered intensely into his shadow, trying to find a hidden answer, but a massive wave of drug-induced fatigue finally crashed over her. Her heavy eyelids drooped. She decided she didn't care. She would no longer exhaust herself trying to understand his impenetrable soul. If he had accepted her out of some twisted, suicidal sense of duty, then she would use this marriage to fully, completely return every ounce of pain he had caused her. No more expectations. No more pathetic hopes. As the mandrake smoke finally dragged her down into the dark, Talia repeated her solemn oath to herself for the 100th time. Today, I will put an absolute end to this damned love. But deep in her shattered heart, Talia knew the truth. The love she killed today would simply resurrect itself again tomorrow. A week later, the entire Imperial court was buzzing like a disturbed hornet's nest. The unprecedented wedding of the crippled second princess and the heir to the Eastern Dukedom was set to take place within the month. Under the direct supervision of Empress Seneviere, the senior court maids were rapidly decorating the grand cathedral, and the royal servants were frantically scurrying back and forth between the kitchens and the cellars. However, beneath the glittering, frantic excitement of the wedding preparations, a strange, incredibly heavy atmosphere hung over the capital. Sir Edric, stepping out of the armory with a bundle of practice swords, frowned deeply as he noticed a group of young knight apprentices whispering conspiratorially in the corner of the training grounds. As he walked closer, snippets of their deeply unpleasant conversation reached his ears. It turns out that the mother and the daughter are just losing men in turns, one of the youths chuckled darkly. Edric recognized the laughing boy immediately. It was the deeply problematic son of Viscount Kendon, a boy who had already organized his own toxic little faction among the junior apprentices. The Viscount's son leaned on his wooden sword and smirked. They say the second princess is the absolute spitting image of the Empress, right? With a face like that, it is no wonder Commander Siorcan finally succumbed. Are you completely stupid? A stocky boy snorted. If it weren't for His Majesty's direct imperial decree, this wedding would never have taken place. The first princess just didn't agree to break the engagement. Ah, you are so naive, the Viscount's son clicked his tongue. Do you even know what kind of family the Siorcan dukes are? Do you honestly think the commander would swap his bride just because the emperor gave an order? He could have refused. No, he didn't mind the swap at all. The boy lowered his voice, leaning in. Think about it. He used to be the personal guard of the second princess for years. Who knows? Maybe they were already sleeping together back then. The knights who rode on the pilgrimage said there was a very strange, tense atmosphere between them. Do not talk nonsense, another apprentice argued. Do you have any idea how viciously the second princess tormented him back then? Sure, she is beautiful, but with a psychotic character like that, he would never fall in love with her. The apprentice sorting arrows snorted loudly. Besides, after the wyvern attack, she is a mangled cripple. Tell me, who in their right mind would voluntarily exchange the flawless first princess for a crippled bitch? I am telling you, there is some serious, insidious political intrigue happening behind closed doors. I see the current curriculum for the Knights of Roem involves training your tongues rather than your swords. Edric's cold, authoritative voice cut through the air like a whip. The apprentices jumped in sheer terror, instantly dropping their practice weapons and snapping to rigid attention. Edric stared at the boys with a look of absolute, freezing disgust. Do you understand that your filthy gossip can be officially regarded as treason against the Imperial family? The faces of the young men instantly drained of color. Edric slowly examined each terrified face, his voice dropping into a lethal, quiet register. The Knights of Roem were created for one singular purpose, to protect the Imperial family with our lives. If you intend to become part of this order, learn this simple truth right now: public gossip regarding the royal family is a court-martial offense. Forgive us, Sir Edric, the apprentices shouted in unison, bowing so deeply their faces nearly touched the dirt. Edric looked down at them silently for a long moment, then turned his back and walked toward the barracks. As he walked, a massive, heavy hand clapped down on his shoulder. Edric spun around, his eyes widening as he recognized his direct superior, Sir Theoric Hart. Theoric offered a tired grin. I see you are keeping the recruits strictly in line. Sir Theoric. Edric glanced at the bell tower looming over the barracks. It is not even noon yet. Should you not be on duty in the main palace? At his questioning glance, Theoric chuckled quietly and ruffled his own short-cropped hair with a massive palm. I came down here to deliver some good news, Theoric said. You have officially been released from your disciplinary probation. Starting tomorrow morning, you will return to active duty in my vanguard squad. Edric froze, staring up at his commander. This was undoubtedly excellent news for his career, but a wave of complex, incredibly bitter feelings violently twisted his stomach. Edric hesitated, then asked quietly, then, who has been assigned to guard the second princess? Theoric's eyes narrowed. He removed his hand from Edric's shoulder and let out a very heavy, aggrieved sigh. The Knights of Roem have been completely, permanently removed from guarding the second princess. Her Majesty the Empress formally decreed that our order deliberately neglected our duties during the wyvern attack. Furthermore, she has entirely removed us from guarding Prince Astros as well. Edric's face hardened into stone. This was a direct, devastating blow to the honor of the entire knightly order. Since the very founding of the Roem Empire, their order had served as the exclusive, sworn guardians of the royal bloodline. To have that sacred right officially stripped away was to deny the very purpose of their existence. Edric lowered his head, utterly crushed by guilt. I am so sorry, Commander, Edric whispered. Because of my absolute incompetence on the plains, the entire order has been disgraced. It is not your fault. Theoric stated it with absolute, unyielding firmness, squeezing Edric's shoulder. It was an unpredictable monster attack. You have absolutely nothing to blame yourself for. Seeing that Edric was still drowning in guilt, Theoric sighed slightly. He looked around the busy training grounds, then gestured with his chin. He led Edric away from the barracks, walking in total silence until they reached a highly secluded, overgrown patch of wasteland behind the armory. Only when he was certain no one could overhear them did Theoric stop. "I know you are a young man with a fiercely keen sense of honor, Edric," Theoric said seriously, sitting down on a massive, chopped tree stump. "But I am telling you the truth. This was not your fault. Do not waste your energy on empty remorse." Edric frowned, his hands clenching into fists. "But I was her sworn personal knight. If you look at it objectively, I failed to secure her perimeter. How can I just accept this disgrace?" Theoric looked up at him, his eyes entirely dead. "Because that attack was deliberately orchestrated by the Empress." Edric froze. He stared at his commander, completely unable to process the words. Theoric continued in a low, grim tone. "Did you not think it was incredibly strange? That a massive swarm of wyverns would spontaneously attack a heavily armed, magically warded Imperial camp?" Theoric shook his head. "Wyverns are territorial predators. They strictly avoid massive armies unless their direct nesting grounds are threatened. And the ravine camp was hundreds of miles away from their natural habitat." "Yes, I thought it was suspicious," Edric stammered. But how can you possibly be certain the Empress was behind it?" "Before the attack began, our mages recorded highly unnatural, covert actions occurring within the second princess's personal retinue." Theoric's voice became significantly harsher. "Furthermore, the Imperial investigators found traces of highly concentrated, artificial blood magic near the perimeter. Someone deliberately baited the wyverns to the camp." Edric opened his mouth in profound shock. As the horrifying reality of his commander's words finally dawned on him, a cold sweat broke out across his back. But the second princess was standing right there." Edric gasped. "She was nearly crushed to death. How could a mother possibly do something so horrific to her own flesh and blood?" "That is exactly why no one suspects her," Theoric said grimly. Edric was completely speechless. "Empress Synoviere is an incredibly terrifying, calculating woman," Theoric continued, his voice heavy with dread. "We began a covert investigation immediately after the incident, but she left absolutely no direct evidence linking her to the bait. Only circumstantial traces. And the primary victim of the attack was her own daughter." Theoric looked up at the sky. Who would ever dare to officially accuse a mother of feeding her own child to monsters? Edric slowly lowered his gaze to the dirt. The image of Thalia crying hysterically under the massive pile of bloody rocks violently surfaced in his mind. He remembered how her shattered body had writhed in absolute, blinding agony while he desperately tried to administer the healing potions. All of that. The wyverns, the crushed bones, the permanent scars, the political fallout. It had all been meticulously arranged by her own mother. Synoviere had intentionally crippled her own daughter. Edric clamped a hand over his mouth as his stomach violently turned over.